Adam Silver's attempt to compliment Caitlin Clark and the WNBA's progress quickly spiraled into one of the most uncomfortable moments of his career. During what was supposed to be a positive NBC interview, Silver's casual acknowledgement of relationship issues inside the league cracked open a door that many suspected was there, but few had seen confirmed. His words didn't just backfire. They exposed a fragile system held together by optics rather than trust. Behind the headlines, the tension between league executives, players, and Commissioner Kathy Engelbert had already been simmering. Silver's comments simply gave it a microphone. Suddenly, questions about leadership, inflated ratings, and internal dysfunction weren't speculation anymore. They were public record. What makes this moment so damaging is how clearly it revealed the league's dependence on Caitlin Clark, not just as a player, but as a lifeline. Her absence due to injury has made every problem more visible, from shaky fan engagement to leadership denial. Silver's remarks didn't just miss the mark. They spotlighted a crisis of credibility, where growth is sold as stability and optimism hides deep fractures in trust. This isn't just a PR fumble. It's a warning sign for the WNBA's future, one that can't be ignored any longer. Adam Silver just cracked open a hornet's nest on national television, no less, in what was probably meant to be a calm, measured statement about the WNBA's growth and future. The NBA commissioner managed to fan the flames an already heated situation. A single comment from Silver about relationship issues within the league has now exploded into a full-blown credibility crisis. Not exactly the PR when the WNBA needed right now. Here's the thing. This wasn't some bombshell expose or leaked footage. It was just Silver sitting down in a polished NBC interview, trying to paint a picture of progress. But instead of boosting confidence, he accidentally confirmed what fans and players have been whispering for months. Something's broken. And it's not just about drama in the locker room or a clash of egos. It's deeper. It's structural. Silver's comments were supposed to reassure everyone that the WNBA is thriving. He mentioned growth, engagement, and internal dynamics. But when he acknowledged relationship issues inside the league, that's when everything started unraveling. Suddenly, fans were side-eyeing league leadership. Players started speaking out. And what could have passed as vague corporate speak turned into a glaring admission that all is not well behind the scenes. It didn't take long before people started connecting the dots. If the WNBA is growing so rapidly, setting viewership records and gaining mainstream attention, why is there so much tension between the players and leadership? Why does everything feel like it's being held together with duct tape and wishful thinking? Silver didn't give a direct answer, but in trying to keep things neutral, he ended up confirming the exact dysfunction people suspected. And it gets worse, because right now, all eyes are on Caitlin Clark. She's been the face of the so-called surge. Her rookie season has been the driving force behind the WNBA's sudden spike in visibility. Her name trends after nearly every game. She's made Indiana Fever games feel like the Super Bowl. But this meteoric rise has created a dangerous dependency, and everyone sees it, including the league's critics. If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. The moment Clark went down with an injury, the panic was instant, not just because she's an incredible athlete, but because the league's momentum feels completely tied to her presence. Without Caitlin Clark on the court, there's a very real fear that viewership tanks, fan engagement drops, and the house of cards collapses. That's not a sustainable strategy. It's a gamble. And the ratings? Let's talk about those for a second. The WNBA has been touting record-breaking numbers. Historic highs, never-before-seen engagement. But once you dig into the details, things start to look suspicious. Turns out, Nielsen changed how they measure viewership. They now include out-of-home viewing, like bars, gyms, airports, places where games might be on TV, even if no one's really watching. So, technically, yes, the numbers are up, but are they really up? Or is it just clever metrics manipulation? Critics aren't buying it. And frankly, fans are getting fed up. The league's claims of explosive growth suddenly feel a little too convenient, a little too polished. When people start noticing the inconsistencies between what they're told and what they actually see, that trust erodes fast. And Silver's comments, instead of clearing things up, only deepened the skepticism. Meanwhile, inside the league, tensions are boiling. Players are frustrated, not just with how things are being run, but with how they're being treated. There are whispers of a possible lockout. Some players have gone on record saying they won't participate until they get the respect and support they deserve. That's not just a PR problem. That's a crisis in the making. And let's not forget, the WNBA is about to enter another round of collective bargaining agreement negotiations. The stakes? Sky high. This isn't just about pay or benefits anymore. It's about basic trust. It's about players feeling like they have a voice in the league they carry on their backs. If those talks go south, it's not hard to imagine a scenario where the next season doesn't happen on schedule, if at all. So when Silver mentioned relationship issues, he wasn't just referring to a couple of awkward boardroom conversations. He accidentally peeled back the curtain on a much larger issue, a disconnect between players and management that's been growing for years. It's a leadership crisis, and the timing couldn't be worse. At the center of all of this is Kathy Engelbert, the WNBA commissioner. She's supposed to be steering the ship, guiding the league through this boom and making sure the foundation stays solid. But fans and players are starting to question whether she's the right person for the job. Her leadership style has been called out as disconnected, overly corporate, and tone-deaf to what the players actually need. And with Adam Silver publicly acknowledging tension in the ranks, it only adds fuel to the fire. There's a growing perception that the league is more focused on appearances than actual progress. Glossy promo videos, feel-good stats, and social media campaigns might make things look exciting on the surface, but underneath, there's chaos. Fans don't want spin. They want transparency. And when they don't get it, they check out. The most frustrating part? This could have been avoided. If league leadership had communicated more openly, if they'd addressed player concerns early, if they hadn't leaned so hard on Caitlin Clark as a one-woman marketing plan, maybe this storm wouldn't feel so catastrophic. But now the cracks are showing, and no amount of PR gloss can hide it. Silver may not have meant to throw the league under the bus, but the damage is done. His words gave legitimacy to every concern fans and players have raised. They confirmed that the problems aren't just rumors, they're real. And unless something changes soon, the consequences could be long-term. The WNBA is at a crossroads. It can't keep riding the Caitlin Clark wave forever. And it certainly can't afford to alienate the very players who've kept it alive for decades. What the league needs now isn't more spin. It's leadership that listens, builds trust, and takes responsibility. But that's easier said than done, especially when the people at the top are more interested in optics than outcomes. So where does the league go from here? That depends on how honest it's willing to be about its numbers, about its relationships, about the very foundation it's trying to build. Because if it keeps pushing a narrative that doesn't match reality, fans will walk, players will protest, and the so-called momentum will disappear as quickly as it arrived. Adam Silver's interview was supposed to be a moment of unity, a statement of support, but instead it became a turning point, a reminder that leadership missteps can undo months of progress in seconds. That's the power of words. And in this case, it was the wrong words at the worst possible time. If there's a silver lining here, no pun intended, it's that the conversation is finally happening. Fans are speaking up. Players are demanding more. And the pressure is on for the league to evolve, not just in numbers, but in values. Because real growth isn't about flashy headlines or inflated ratings. It's about trust. And once that's gone, it's not easy to get back. If you've been watching this unfold and wondering how it all got so messy, now you know. One comment exposed the truth. Now it's up to the league to decide what kind of future it wants to fight for. If you got thoughts, and let's be real, who doesn't? Drop a comment below. Are the ratings real? Is the league too dependent on Caitlin Clark? Can the WNBA fix this leadership mess before it's too late? And if you want to stay plugged into the latest drama, meltdowns, and PR disasters from around the world of sports and pop culture, make sure you subscribe. There's always more where this came from. You know what's wild? Just how fast the tone around the WNBA shifted. Just a few months ago, the narrative was all about progress. Finally, the league was having a moment. Big sponsors were showing up. More airtime, more coverage, more merch sales. And at the heart of it all, Caitlin Clark, the generational talent, the ratings magnet, the golden ticket. But now, it's starting to feel like the league bet everything on one star, and the second she stumbled, literally, the foundation started shaking. And here's the uncomfortable truth that no one at the top wants to say out loud. The WNBA wasn't prepared for this kind of spotlight. Not structurally, not culturally, and definitely not from a leadership perspective. Because when Silver sat down and said there were relationship issues inside the league, he wasn't just dropping a vague corporate euphemism. He was, maybe accidentally, admitting that the league is fractured, that behind the scenes, there are players who feel unheard, leadership that feels defensive, and a league that's teetering between momentum and meltdown. And that tension? It's not just behind closed doors anymore. It's showing up on the court in interviews and passive-aggressive tweets, and in the very public calls from players demanding change. Let's be honest. The players aren't just frustrated. They're exhausted. They've been pushing this league forward for decades with grit, resilience, and barely enough resources. And now, when the spotlight finally shows up, when there's finally money and attention and actual investment, they're being sidelined in favor of a single narrative, a narrative that doesn't include their names. So when someone like Silver steps in and casually mentions there's tension, it's like, yeah, no kidding. There's tension because players feel like props in their own league. There's tension because leadership keeps throwing around words like growth, while ignoring the basic needs of the people making that growth possible. And Caitlin? She's caught in the middle. She didn't ask to be the face of all this drama. But when a league put all its marketing eggs in her basket and then failed to protect her, both physically and professionally, it created a situation where her every move is scrutinized, politicized, and weaponized. Then the injury happened, and that's when it hit everyone, fans, execs, critics alike, just how fragile the current situation really is. With Caitlin Clark sidelined, the WNBA's so-called boom felt a lot more like a bubble. Because when your entire PR strategy is built around one person, what happens when that person isn't playing? That's not a league plan. That's a liability. And it's not just about Caitlin. It's about the message that gets sent to every other player. That no matter how long you've been grinding, no matter how many seasons you've played, no matter what you've done for the league, you're still treated like a background character. That kind of messaging eats away at morale, at unity, at trust. And trust? That's already hanging by a thread. Especially now that fans are starting to notice just how curated the league's public narrative has become. The ratings are up, but are they really? Sure, technically they're breaking records. But when those numbers are being inflated by new Nielsen metrics that count TVs in bars and hotel lobbies, it starts to feel off, like the league is performing for investors instead of actually building something solid. And fans notice, especially diehard ones. They see the disconnect between the league's Instagram feed and the players' reality. They hear the tone in post-game interviews. They feel the awkwardness when leadership pretends everything is thriving, even while players hint at potential lockout. And if you think that's just noise, consider what's at stake. The collective bargaining agreement is looming. Players are gearing up for battle. They're asking for better pay, better travel conditions, real investment, and actual seats at the table. And if leadership doesn't show up with something more than buzzwords and press releases, they could walk. That's not just a negotiation. That's an existential threat. And here's where things get messy for Silver. Because while he's technically not the one running the WNBA day-to-day, he is the NBA commissioner, the boss of the league that holds the WNBA's purse strings. And when he goes on national television and starts talking about internal issues without offering any accountability or solutions, it sends a very clear message. The people in charge might not really get it. And fans? They're tired of being sold a fantasy. They're tired of being told that everything is fine when they can see the cracks. They're tired of seeing their favorite players sidelined, not just by injuries, but by leadership decisions that don't reflect what the league actually is or could be. Because for all the talk of progress, the truth is this. Progress doesn't mean anything if it's not sustainable. You can't build a league on a single star. You can't keep inflating numbers and hope no one notices. And you definitely can't dismiss player concerns and expect them to stay quiet. What Silver's comments did, intentionally or not, will confirm that the WNBA's internal issues are real and possibly worse than people thought. That behind the highlight reels and sold-out arenas, there's discontent, there's division, and unless leadership gets serious about addressing it, the future of the league could be in jeopardy. Because let's be honest, right now, the WNBA is running on vibes and viral clips. But vibes don't negotiate contracts. Vibes don't keep players healthy. Vibes don't build trust. That takes leadership, real leadership, not just press statements and media interviews. And what's truly frustrating is how preventable this all was. The rise of Caitlin Clark didn't have to create division. The ratings boost didn't have to be exaggerated. The players didn't have to feel ignored. But at every turn, the people in charge made short-term decisions instead of long-term plans. And now they're paying the price. So where does the league go from here? Well, that depends on whether leadership is finally ready to listen, to stop spinning, to actually sit down with the players and treat them like partners, not employees. Because without that shift, this whole WNBA moment will just be another missed opportunity in a long history of almosts. The fans are watching, the players are talking, and the clock is ticking. One comment from Adam Silver pulled back the curtain. Now, the league has two options. Face the reality and fix it, or keep pretending and hope no one notices when it all falls apart. It shouldn't have come to this. The WNBA had every opportunity to capitalize on this moment in a way that empowered all its players, strengthened the league's foundation, and proved to fans they could finally step into the spotlight and own it. But instead of unity, we got fractures. Instead of transparency, we got spin. And instead of lifting the whole league, the people at the top doubled down on a strategy that made one play the face of everything, while ignoring the cracks forming underneath. Now, we're seeing the consequences. And Adam Silver's offhand acknowledgement of relationship issues was a match tossed into a pile of dry brush. Because here's the thing. The league didn't need a press release to confirm there was tension. You could feel it in the games, in the interviews, in the way veteran players side-eyed the coverage, the accolades, the corporate endorsements all flowing in one direction. And when Silver finally said out loud, it wasn't some noble act of honesty, it was a slip, a crack in the corporate armor, a reminder that behind the facade of historic growth and record-breaking viewership, there's dysfunction that leadership can't gloss over anymore. Let's talk about the players for a second, because it's not just about Caitlin Clark, and it never was. This is about the women who've been building this league since day one, often with little to no recognition, putting their bodies on the line, flying commercial, playing back-to-backs with brutal schedules, all while being told to wait their turn for investment and respect. And now that the cameras are finally on, they're watching executives fumble the moment, again, and fans are noticing it too. This isn't just a behind-the-scenes drama anymore. It's spilling out into the public. Fans are dissecting interviews, calling out contradictions, questioning whether the viewership numbers being paraded around are as organic as they seem. And when you start to lose fan trust, especially the fans who stuck around through the lean years, you're in serious trouble. The leadership problem is no longer just a management issue. It's a branding issue, a credibility issue. Because once people start believing that you're faking the metrics, that you're ignoring your own players, that you're more concerned with headlines and health, that's when the whole thing starts to unravel. Fast. And what about that supposed growth? How sustainable is it, really? If everything hinges on Caitlin Clark, then what happens if she's injured long-term, or burned out from the pressure, or just over it? You can't run a league like a pop-up shop. You can't treat players like assets. You can't expect loyalty from athletes you treat as replaceable until a more profitable narrative comes along. The WNBA needs more than a star. It needs a system that works for the players, not just because of them. It needs leadership that listens when players say they feel invisible, not executives who show up once a year for a handshake and a press hit. And the collective bargaining agreement? That's going to be a defining moment. The players are gearing up. They've seen what happens when you stay quiet. They know now, more than ever, that if they don't advocate for themselves, no one else will. And they're not just asking for bigger checks. They're asking for structural respect, for a seat at the table, for basic conditions that reflect the professionalism of the league they're helping to build. And if they don't get it, a lockout isn't off the table. That's not a threat, it's a warning. Because this time, players are done waiting. And the league, frankly, can't afford another misstep. It can't afford to alienate the very people who are holding it up. It can't afford another offhand comment from Adam Silver that accidentally reveals more than it should. And it definitely can't afford to lose the fans who are just starting to believe the hype. This was supposed to be the WNBA's breakout season, the one where everything changed. But instead of unity, there's division. Instead of clarity, confusion. And instead of building something lasting, the league may have built a brand new set of problems on top of the old ones it never fixed. So what's the moral here? Simple. You can't fake growth. You can't Photoshop culture. You can't slap a star player on the front of the league and hope that everything else holds together in the background. Real growth? It's messy. It's slow. It involves listening to uncomfortable truths and fixing what's broken, not burying it beneath glossy media campaigns. Adam Silver's comment was the spark. But the fire? That's been smoldering for a while. So here we are. The WNBA is standing at a crossroads. And the question isn't whether it can survive this moment. The question is whether leadership is willing to finally do the work it's been avoiding. Players are ready. Fans are paying attention. And the clock is ticking. If you've made it this far, you know this isn't just a sports story. It's a story about trust, power, and what happens when the people in charge forget who they're supposed to be leading. So tell us, do you think the WNBA can fix this mess? Or is the league too deep in the spin cycle to come out clean? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more breakdowns of the chaos behind the headlines. Because you know as well as we do, this drama, it's just getting started.